This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Now what? A good but not great jobs report puts a wrench in the Fed's plans to possibly raise interest rates. Or does it?
Drug plan. Hillary Clinton jumps into the fray as she pledges to crack down on drug price hikes.
And shifting mindset. Meet the entrepreneur hoping to change the way Americans get around town. All that and more for Friday, September 2nd. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sharon Epperson, in tonight for Sue Herrera.
And I'm Bill Griffith, in for Tyler Matheson this evening. You know, for all the hand-wringing, the anticipation, and the questions about interest rates leading up to today's jobs report, the number itself left us with more anticipation and hand-wringing and questions. That's because the data showed the pace of hiring slowed in August, and while it was considered a solid report, it did cast some doubt on whether it's enough for the Fed to act. The economy added 151,000 new jobs last month. That was below the estimates of 180,000, and it was down more than 200 from the 270,000 we saw in June and in July. By the way, the unemployment rate held steady at 4.9%. Hampton Pearson tells us what it all means.
In August, employers slowed hiring and barely raised wages. The manufacturing and construction sectors lost a combined 20,000 jobs. Labor Secretary Thomas Perez cited weak global expansion and the strong dollar as headwinds for U.S. manufacturers.
Manufacturing is an export-dependent industry, and when you have a strong dollar and you have so many other economies that haven't seen our recovery, that's a real challenge.
Average hourly earnings, now at just under $26 an hour, barely moved in August and are up just 2.4% year over year. Fed watchers say today's wage number is not what Fed Chair Janet Yellen wants to see as a condition for raising key short-term interest rates.
The slowdown in average hourly earnings, that's enough to set people back on the sidelines within the Fed as well, and I think that's very important.
Even with the August slowdown, job growth for the last 3 months still averages 232,000 jobs per month, enough over time to also lower the unemployment rate. At a recent Washington, D.C. area jobs fair, most applicants already had jobs, and even middle-aged job seekers were looking for opportunities to move up.
Even though I personally have a job or have several jobs, just to find that job that I can really put everything into and feel more accomplished with has been the difficulty for me.
I've been looking for a few months, and I'm not discouraged yet.
Meanwhile, the August slowdown is the latest twist in the debate over the Fed rate hike timetable.
It's possible that they wait until the December meeting. But I think to us it's a little more likely that it's going to be September.
It would require a pretty solid case to raise, I think, for them to weigh in before the U.S. presidential election.
I think the gate is wide open. The FOMC needs to drive the truck through.
It turns out the August jobs report has a history of coming in way below expectations. Over the last 5 years, it has been revised upwards on average by some 70,000 jobs. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
Stocks got a bump after that jobs number was interpreted as increasing the likelihood that the Fed won't act this month. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 72 points to 18,491. The Nasdaq climbed 22, and the S&P 500 added 9. For the week, all three indices rose around 0.5%. Now let's bring in Anthony Chan for more on today's jobs report. He is the chief economist at Chase. And Anthony, one of the items that comes up all the time, and we heard it from one of these job seekers in the report earlier, is that they have several jobs already. They're looking for a full-time job. Big debate between whether we're seeing job growth in terms of full-time or part-time jobs. What do we glean from this month's employment report about that debate?
Well, we clearly see we are creating jobs, and we know the Federal Reserve has estimated we need about 100,000 every month just to absorb the natural growth in the labor force. So whether you look at the establishment survey where you got 151,000, or you look at the household survey, you got 97,000. Both of them are right in the same zip code. There are a lot of jobs out there, and I don't think that this is an economy that's faltering in any way. And as for full-time versus part-time jobs, you constantly hear that we're not creating any full-time jobs, but still, since the economic expansion began, we've created 11.8 million full-time jobs. And for those people out there that are saying it's all part-time jobs, we've actually lost 530,000 part-time jobs since the economic expansion began. Yep. The first time we've ever seen that in any expansion since 1970.
And yet the Fed is not moving yet. For all the hand-wringing and questions that I was mentioning earlier, Anthony, isn't it possible this is the new normal and it's going to be like this for the foreseeable future, and we should stop anticipating when the Fed's going to start raising rates?
I think you're right, Bill. We know that the Federal Reserve has said in this very slow-growing economy that is disappointing by its very nature, growing subpar relative to other expansions, we know that the interest rate the Federal Reserve needs to sort of stave off inflation is much, much lower. In fact, they spent a lot of time in Jackson Hole discussing this, and that's one of the reasons why I think the Federal Reserve has the luxury to wait, not indefinitely, but until the end of the year, just to be more certain that this economic expansion is on track. So I don't think there's any cost whatsoever, especially when core price PCE, which is the inflation rate they monitor, is below 2%. It's 1.6% year over year. And what did Janet Yellen tell us at Jackson Hole? It will be a few more years before inflation gets to the point where it meets the Federal Reserve target.
Is there anything that may change your mind, Anthony, in terms of when we will see the Fed move? You say at the end of the year. What other data points are you looking for that may change that time frame?
Well, we can see more indication that retail sales is getting a little bit stronger. We could see more indication that other parts of the economy are getting stronger. There's a lot of things between now and September that can change our minds slightly. But right now, it looks like the odds have to be in favor of December rather than September.
All right. Thank you very much. Anthony Chan with Chase.
Pleasure.
Hampton Pearson just told us where the jobs aren't right now. So now we're going to tell you one place where they are. With presidential campaigns in full swing, the need to staff a new former president's protection detail this January, and a combined 17% of special agents and uniformed officers up for retirement means the Secret Service is definitely on a mission to hire. And our Kate Rogers looks to enroll.
If you're looking for a high-energy, hard-charging career, the Secret Service may be right for you. And they're aggressively hiring.
We need someone who is a self-starter, a self-initiator, just a high-caliber, high-quality individual.
But it's not an easy job to get. Only between 10 and 12% of more than 22,000 applicants for uniformed division and special agents this year will make it past best qualified onto the background check phase of the process.
We do have a very rigorous hiring process that includes a series of interviews, a background investigation. We employ the polygraph as well as drug screenings.
Salaries are competitive, ranging from $45,000 a year on the low end to nearly $100,000 a year on the high end, depending on the role. Agents also have the opportunity to be placed globally and witness history, protecting politicians and dignitaries. Special agent trainees like 28-year-old Erica Remshard, a former cyber threat analyst, are doing things they've never done before. From learning to protect the president during public appearances like rope-lying meet and greets, to honing firearm skills, controlled braking, and evasive driving techniques. Remshard didn't come from a law enforcement background, but is being brought up to speed during her 6-month training.
Not having any prior law enforcement experience, I was kind of nervous about applying to the Secret Service, but they had made me understand that they are going to teach you from the bottom up.
Ability to handle the rigors of physical training is paramount to the success of trainees here.
They hold everyone to high PT standards, fitness standards. I think the guys were a little intimidated by me. I do have a strong fitness background.
And being strong both mentally and physically is key for trainees. I spent 2 days here at the James Rowley Training Center in Beltsville, Maryland, and the regimen is not for the faint of heart. From shooting, police, drop your weapon, to driving,
let off right here, get back on, minimize your input.
And of course, physical fitness, I was pushed to the limit. I need help. Above all else, trainees need to display a true willingness to serve.
You're going to have to be flexible and be able to adjust at a moment's notice. The best laid plans always go awry, and I think an individual absolutely needs to have flexibility built into their mindset.
For Nightly Business Report, I'm Kate Rogers, Beltsville, Maryland.
We're also following this story. Hurricane Hermine made landfall overnight in Florida, the first to do so in more than a decade. It's now been downgraded to a tropical storm as she churns up the Atlantic seaboard. Residents, businesses, and even ports are preparing for this, and Morgan Brennan is riding out the storm in Savannah, Georgia.
State officials warned of heavy rains, possible tornadoes, power outages, and perhaps most pressingly, the potential for flooding, with as many as 15 inches of rainfall expected in some isolated areas. The governors of Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina declared states of emergency in dozens of counties, and in Florida, at least one storm-related death was confirmed. But as Hermine barrels up the eastern seaboard, property insurance companies are also preparing for claims. Throughout the region, schools and businesses were closed. Even the ports, Savannah, which is the fourth largest container port in the country, began closing down operations last night. And 2 hours north of here in Charleston, the port complex there closed down operations midday today. In Florida, officials are concerned about another natural threat as well, that the pools of standing water could lead to the spread of the Zika virus. But here in Savannah, many visitors are stranded, many of them staying in these hotels here along downtown's riverfront. The Savannah airport is operating, but a number of flights have been canceled, most notably flights in and out of New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Charlotte, North Carolina. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan in Savannah, Georgia.
Coming up, our market monitor this week says he has 3 stocks that you need to own for the long haul.
Well, say goodbye to those antibacterial soaps. The Food and Drug Administration is banning 19 ingredients, including some common ones in the popular soaps and washes. The FDA says there's no proof they work better than conventional soap and water, or that they're even safe.
Wait till my wife hears about that. Amid the outcry over a dramatic rise in the cost of EpiPens, Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton has rolled out a plan to address what she calls excessive price hikes on drugs. Our John Harwood joins us from Washington tonight. And John, what exactly did Secretary Clinton propose?
Well, Bill, nimble campaigns react to public outrage, and Hillary Clinton did that today by saying that she's going to create a consumer oversight board to monitor these kind of price increases. It would be composed of representatives from various agencies with oversight over pharmaceuticals and also health care. So places like the FDA and the HHS, Health and Human Services Department, don't know exactly who would be on it. They rolled this out rather quickly in response to this controversy, but she's saying she's ready to roll and monitor what those drug companies are doing and the pace of increases.
How likely would it be possible for her to roll this out without any type of legislation from Congress?
Some of what she's proposing could be done. For example, she says the board, Sharon, could waive import restrictions on alternative measures of dealing with patients' problems if the particular thing like the EpiPen goes up too fast. But other things like penalties on drug companies that raise their prices too fast, that would require legislation from Congress.
I'm going to sound cynical on this, but many traders and even healthcare industry CEOs have said to me during interviews that this comes up every 4 years, it seems, and then it goes away after the election. Any reason to believe that it won't happen again this time?
Certainly could happen. We're talking about a board that's being created for a relatively small number of cases, like the case with Mr. Shkreli earlier this year, right, and also the Mylan case. But we do have 2 nominees this year who have both proposed, for example, to give the federal government the power to negotiate with Big Pharma over the cost that the federal government pays. So there is some clear inclination on behalf of both parties to get a little bit tougher. Whether it will take this form in the end, don't know for sure.
Both parties, as you said, have addressed this issue in some form. Is the Trump campaign saying anything about drug pricing, or what are they likely to say?
Well, interestingly, Sharon, they have, Donald Trump has talked about using the negotiating authority, so that's on the record. But today, the Trump campaign did not comment on this proposal by Hillary Clinton. They were trying to keep the attention focused on the details of that FBI interview that was released today, the summary of the FBI interview related to Hillary Clinton's emails.
John Harwood in Washington. Thanks for joining us, John.
You bet.
Yum Brands is selling off some of its China unit before it goes public, and that's where we begin tonight's market focus. The owner of KFC and Pizza Hut said it will sell a $460 million stake in its Chinese operations to a private equity firm and a subsidiary of e-commerce giant Alibaba. The business is expected to be spun off from Yum Brands by the end of October and will begin trading independently on the New York Stock Exchange in November. Shares rose 50 cents to 91.26. Investors sold off shares of Verifone following last night's disappointing quarterly results. The payment terminal company posted worse than expected revenue and a surprise loss, saying the process of integrating new machines into its businesses has not been running smoothly. Verifone also gave yearly guidance that missed estimates. Shares fell 16% to $16.81.
Smith & Wesson stock got hit today. It's not exactly clear why. Last night, the gun maker said that it saw its profit double as it benefited from strong demand for firearms. Those results topped estimates. Sales of the gun maker also came in higher than expected, prompting the company to significantly raise its full-year outlook. Nonetheless, traders sold on the news, the stock down by 6% to $27.69. And shares of Lululemon continued to fall after the athletic apparel company issued weak guidance after the bell yesterday. Overall, the company did report a rise in profit, topping analyst estimates. Sales also got a lift and were in line with expectations, but Lululemon finished down more than 10% today to $68.57.
Our market monitor likes stocks he says should be in your portfolio for the long haul. This is his first time joining us on the program. He's George Schultz, founder of Schultz Asset Management. George, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, what we talk about so much on this program, interest rates and the election, that's what's top of mind for many investors. You say there's going to be a lot of volatility in 2016, but focus on stocks that you can own for the long haul. Why do you like, despite what we've seen with auto sales numbers recently, GM?
GM is just incredibly cheap. It's one of Warren Buffett is one of their largest shareholders. After the company emerged from reorganization a few years ago, where they eliminated $60 billion in debt, its balance sheet is just extremely strong. For the second quarter, they had a record quarter, extremely strong earnings per share. Management increased their guidance for EPS for the rest of the year up to almost $6 a share. And frankly, it's just incredibly cheap. It's one of the cheapest stocks on the market. It's trading at about 5.3 times PE. It also has a nice fat dividend yield, almost 5%, which is a pretty good alternative to today's extremely low interest rates if you're looking to collect income.
You know, GM I get in the auto sector, but you have Fiat Chrysler on here. There's a company that's really struggling right now. Why them?
Well, a lot of people think it's struggling, but it's not. It's actually quite an interesting turnaround. The company also has a very strong balance sheet. A couple of years ago, Fiat bought Chrysler for practically zero out of bankruptcy and left behind $20 billion in debt. Earlier this year, Fiat spun off Ferrari, and shareholders of Fiat got shares of Ferrari as part of that transaction. Going forward, we think they might spin off Maserati, and they've also spun off RCS Media. And there is a plan to maybe also spin off their components business.
I want to ask you about one of your stocks. You say the monster bank that you have to own is Bank of America. Why do you like Bank of America for the long haul?
Bank of America is a rock-solid bank, record capital and liquidity levels since the crisis. The company has $1.5 trillion in loans and other earning assets on its balance sheet. Warren Buffett is the largest shareholder. And if you do believe interest rates are going up, this bank will make a lot more net interest income as interest rates go up on that huge book of loans and other assets.
Great picks there. Thank you very much. George Schultz with Schultz Asset Management.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've heard of electric cars. We're going to show you a man who's introducing Americans to electric bikes coming up.
Remember that computer outage a few weeks ago at Delta? Well, now the bill has come due. Delta says that outage cost it $100 million in lost revenue last month. The computer failure stranded passengers and caused thousands of canceled flights over several days.
Finally tonight, problem solving, multitasking, and dealing with the unexpected are traits that military veterans can bring to running a business. And one vet who brought those home from the Middle East, along with a debilitating back injury, his desire to get active and get back in shape led him to electric bicycles. And now he's staking a claim in this niche but fast-growing market. Before he found electric bikes, back pain limited Chris Nolte's ability to exercise, to work, indeed to live life. He hurt his back while serving in the military.
I grew up very quickly in the military. You know, I went in at 19 years old. I was overseas at 20, 21.
In 2000, Nolte joined the Army Reserve. He operated fuel supply trucks. A truck landed in a ditch in Kuwait, only days before the start of the Iraq War in 2003. And despite hurting his back, Nolte stayed on 4 more months before coming home to Long Island.
I was very concerned when I returned about what my future is going to look like.
Physical labor was not an option. By 2006, he was helping a family friend put his luggage sales business online. He was immersed in e-commerce when, in 2011, he discovered electric bikes, online of course. Nolte converted his own bike and got the push he needed to get back on the road.
I didn't need to focus on where I was limited with my physical abilities, and I just kept on learning.
He learned that 180 million electric-powered bikes and scooters are on the roads in China. Many use motorcycle-like throttles. But now, pedal assist bikes are becoming more popular. The motor is engaged only when the rider pedals. Bosch e-bike systems makes drive mechanisms used by many popular bike brands. The CEO recently said that 1 out of every 3 bikes sold in the Netherlands is electric. In Germany, more than 1 in every 5 new sales are e-bikes. But here in the U.S., it is barely more than 1 out of 100. Sensing an opening, Chris Nolte began selling e-bikes online in 2011.
Our first year, we did about $50,000 in business, and then we were pretty much tripling for every year after that in size. Up until 2014, we hit $1 million in sales.
Nolte says 2016 will be his 3rd year in a row with sales of at least $1 million. Last year, he opened a retail shop in Brooklyn, New York. Most of his bikes sell in the $2,500 to $4,000 range. Baby boomers looking for help exercising or just getting around are natural customers. But Nolte says millennials are buying in too.
I don't have to deal with parking. I just pull it right into my living room at night.
Tyler Glass paid about $3,500 for an e-bike that he uses to travel 10 to 20 miles in New York City pretty much every day.
And I fell in love the second I rode one.
For the business to thrive, Nolte knows the American mindset will have to embrace the idea of using bikes for transportation, not just for recreation and exercise.
We're kind of building something for the future as bike infrastructure improves.
New York City, which has become more bike-friendly, is the only city in New York State where pedal-assisted bikes are street legal. Across the country, regulations are murky, but Nolte, ever the transportation specialist, is confident that that will change.
I don't see it as just a small percentage of the bike market overall. I see it a percentage of just people that need to move. And really that's kind of what our tagline is changing the way we move.
By the way, bike sales in Europe have been flat for more than a decade, except when it comes to electric bikes. And Nolte thinks that there will be a lot of opportunity to scale up if the laws become more uniform across this country here.
Yeah, a lot of people interested in just moving, and you don't have to pedal as fast, right? It's still going to go.
You don't. There is a law. You can't go faster than 20 miles an hour, and these bikes have the regulators to keep it from that, as a matter of fact.
All right, great story.
Yep, that's a Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Bill Griffith. Thanks for watching, and we want to remind you that this is the time of year your public television station seeks your support.
And I'm Sharon Epperson. Thank you for your support, and have a great weekend.